If you're wondering about HOAs in Florida, let me tell you this. They, well, that's what a lot of people think. I've done videos like this in the past, and I've said they're HOA people and they're non-HOA people. Are they worth it? Well, there's a lot going on in terms of regulation right now. HOAs, they're changing. My name is Ray Fernandez. I was living in Palm Beach, Florida, powered by EXP Luxury Homes. If you're thinking about moving to Florida, this is a channel you're going to want to know about. So we handle relocations, people moving from other parts of the country, other parts of the world to here we call sunny South Florida, and actually everywhere in Florida. And so we see it all. And the thing is, in Florida, there are a ton of HOAs and not like other places. So that's why we take this question more often than not. And there's 55 plus communities too. That's a whole nother realm. They even more. So we speak with people every day moving to this area. And I appreciate when you're coming from like Canada and Michigan and Boston, Massachusetts and California, all over the country. You guys don't have HOAs like we do here. We are literally the land of HOAs. I've read somewhere that it's about 50% HOAs in Florida. I think it's more like, at least in this area, more like 85%. There are some pros and cons. There's a pros and cons video pretty much of HOAs, but there's some regulations that things are going to change. And these are the things, if you're looking at a community in Florida, don't make a mistake. You're going to want to know if the community you're investigating are able to handle these things. Some of these might sound random, but that's okay. Let me start with something that might be a little bit random. Commercial vehicles. I had someone recently that was coming to visit Florida, and they were doing this program we call Stay and Play, which is a 55 plus community that does this, the builder that does this, in their 55 plus communities. And they have one up in Port St. Lucie, Florida called Riverland, which is one of the most elaborate 55 plus communities in really the whole state, maybe even the whole country. When all is said and done, there'll probably be 10,000 homes there. Right now, they're not even close to that, but they will be. When they came to the sales center, and they did ask ahead of time, I will give them credit, these buyers, they have one of those big vans, it's a Mercedes Mercedes van, but it looks like a commercial vehicle. They were going to stay on the premises, and the HOA told them, you need to turn around. So that van is called a Sprinter. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's not really a commercial vehicle, but that'll give you an idea as to what they will allow and what they will not allow. There is some regulation in these communities now that, well, in the state, I should say, they're trying to outlaw some of what HOAs are doing. But it's fair to say most HOAs have rules on commercial vehicles. You could fight it. As an example, this is a very common one. If you own a business, like our plumbing business, it's Ray's Plumbing or Ray's Roofing or Bob's Power Washing, and you have it on the side of your car or your van or your truck, they're not going to allow that in lots of cases. So if you're looking at these communities, you need to do the homework. We help you with it. We help people do exactly that. So what sometimes people do is they actually put like a cover on the car, or if you put it in your garage, no problema. There's no problem if you put it in your garage. So, but you want to do that. And one of the things you really want to do, and we do a lot of new construction homes. We are a new home co-broker with EXP Luxury Homes. Probably more than half our business is new construction. We do resales too. But it just so turns out a lot of you people that are relocating here are looking at new construction. But we work with the builders that work with the HOA. And the HOAs, they could be tricky. You want to ask these questions ahead of time. And I can help prepare you as to what questions you should ask. Like I said, commercial vehicles, that is one. How do you handle the turnover? What's a turnover? Not turnover pie. So when a community is handled by a builder, it will eventually turn over to the residents. The builder's not going to run the HOA forever. And I'll go a little bit more into this later, but you want to know, where are you in the stage of closing this out? Again, using Riverland as an example only because it's a big master plan community that does that stay and play program. By the way, if you want to, stay for $99 for a couple of nights and check out that community, reach out to our team. We get a ton of people who do that. The other thing I got to say, really important, go to the HOA meetings. You owe it to yourself. If you just sit back and don't ask questions, it's sort of your fault. They have an HOA meeting maybe every month, maybe every other month. For us, it was every other month. So it's not a lot of time, an hour, hour and a half every other month, and you can ask your questions. I highly, highly recommend it. The other thing that they can do, and I want to say this happens, it's prevalent, but bid rigging. So again, you potentially, we've caught people doing this and we've kicked them out. What we've basically said is that if you don't want us to tell the community what you're doing, you need to resign right now. And they resigned. Bid rigging. So let's go back to landscaping again. You're in a community, you're running, you have a board, usually it's always an odd number. It's like 3 or 5 or 7. Ours is 5. A lot of them are 5 members, board members. They're elected by the residents. So they're going to, let's say, vote on a landscaping company. What happens is they're going to look at 1, 2, 3, 4. Bill, they have to do have a few there, so they have options. So at least it shows that you're doing your due diligence. Well, if that guy on the board has his cousin, could be his brother, it could be his sister, it could be anybody, and they have a landscaping company, and you tell them that no, these are real numbers what it can cost. $65,000 is what the maintenance will be every month that they're going to pay the landscaping company in addition to other stuff. But we're going to, if you know that one came in at 65 and this one came in at 60, this one came in at 80, and you whisper to your friend, your cousin, your brother, your sister, hey, you need to beat 65, that's bid rigging and that's illegal. Hold your board members accountable. There are lots of people, that's what they do. Maybe they can't afford. We had a board member that I can honestly say I don't think could afford to live in my community, which is okay. You know what you do in that case? You sell your home and go somewhere for less money. That's the answer. I'll sell your home. That's the answer. But they'll end up trying to get VIGs from the landscaping company, from the pool company, and all that kind of stuff. I'll tell you about my HOA. My HOA, we had sort of a hostile takeover, which I was fine with because these people walked door to door and basically said, "Don't vote for these people, vote for us." And the people that actually won, and we're holding them accountable now, are incompetent. Incompetent is a generous word for them. The one person that was the ringleader made so many mistakes that that I don't it maybe is not public, but they'll find out as it comes in. You need a financial background too, because you're running a business like ours is a $3 million business, and you need to know what you're doing. Anyways, let me go to some other issues. I'll come back. I'll touch back on this again. But let me go to some other issues that people have when it comes to HOAs. Let me give you a pro. All right, and this is a God honest pro. And I know it sounds like I'm not being in favor of HOAs, but I truly am. And here's one of the pros. Now, I read this statistic, and I believe it's probably not only true, I believe it's probably low. The average Florida community that has an HOA sells at 5 to 6% higher than that equivalent property with a non-HOA. I think it's probably closer to 10%, 15%, but I think it's fair to say that it is higher. One of the pros is it protects you from people doing silly things. Now, maybe you're okay with someone painting your next door neighbor painting his house, neon purple and pink. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe you're okay with it, but it does stuff like that. There are certain parameters and guidelines that these things get, and that's what they do. Now, In my community, it would be inappropriate to have chickens running around the front of my yard. In some communities, like we have a community nearby where I live, it's called Loxahatchee, where it's completely appropriate. It's a non-HOA community, and I helped a buyer out there in Loxahatchee once that we were looking at the house, and I remember we were looking across the street, and their neighbor across the street had it was they were fenced off, and they had chickens in the front yard, and a lot of them. So, and he was completely fine with that. It can be really rural living. Oftentimes people say, I don't want people telling me what to do. All right, I get that, but it is regulation. The other thing that it does is it helps from a pro perspective, in my opinion, is that if someone is not cutting their grass and it's like a foot high, the HOA is going to say that's just not going to happen. Sometimes HOAs do the lawn for you. I always tell people evaluate the cost of an HOA on an apples to apples basis. More on that in a minute. But let me go over some of the other elements that you're going to want to know on if you're thinking about moving to an HOA community in Florida. By the way, before I go there, as I mentioned, my name is Ray Fernandez. I'm living in Palm Beach, Florida. Each week we do a video here. And if you're thinking about moving to this area and you want to ask questions from people like us who've actually done it before, well, there's a few ways to get a hold of us. Down below is our email address. That's one great way. Also on the screen, you see our phone number. You can either call or text that number. But literally two of the best ways is in the description in the comment section. There's a link. Click on that link. What that'll do is have some time for us to speak, that's with me, either through a phone call or through a Zoom, whatever way you feel most comfortable. In any case, we got your back when it comes to relocating here to sunny South Florida. I'll talk about that Zoom many times today because it's literally the best way for us to reach out to you. I've had people reach out to us literally every day asking for Zooms, and I'd like you to consider doing that if you're considering Florida. Garbage cans. These are some of the smaller ones, but I'm going to try to cover as many as I can. We have garbage day twice a week, right? Much of most communities have. You have a bulk pickup 2 days, you have recyclables on 1 day a week, and you put your bins out, you put your garbage cans out, and you're not supposed to put them out like the night before is fine, but not like 2 days before. And you got to pick it up, after the garbage is collected, maybe not like in an hour, but certainly not the next day. And there are regulations on that because you don't want to, especially if you want to sell your home and maintain the value of your home, which is what the HOA should do. You're gonna want some rule with this. I look at my community and, we're 450 homes and there's always a couple of them that aren't picking up. And that's okay because I go on vacation too and I might arrange it and maybe somebody didn't do their job. It's okay. But if you do it regularly, it's a problem. If you come home if your recycle day and your garbage day is a Wednesday and you come home at 5 o'clock and you do it then, no problem. If your recycle day and your garbage day is Wednesday and they're out there on Saturday morning, that's a problem. They will probably and I'll go over more of this later, send you a violation. And usually the first violation is just like a friendly warning. Just take your garbage cans in. That's one of the things that they do. But it's really to protect the way the neighborhood looks. But I want to, continue on the violation thing. So many of the HOAs have something called a violations committee. And sometimes these people are like wannabe police and wannabe Hitlers or wannabe power, and they get their power drunk. Do not let that happen. You have every right as a resident to demand that the violations committee be changed. Ours stinks. I was working over the years to try and fix it. It's gotten better, but get fresh people in there if it's a problem. You get your letter. It's like a friendly letter, and they're usually pretty good about it. If it's a month later, you pretty much threw it away and ignore it, you'll get a second one. There is a law as to how many letters you get. The HOA has an attorney. I promise you, they all do. They have an attorney on call, on staff, maybe probably not on staff, but on call to help them with this. And you're only allowed to be fined. I don't know how well much you guys know this in Florida, up to $1,000 only. So they can't like fine you $1,000 a day till eternity. So, but it is annoying to get those letters, and you eventually they can probably at the HOA meetings call you out. You don't want that. But so that's how it works. It's pretty much the three letters. And if you're not doing answering it by then, there's something wrong. And the truth is, and I've been violated myself a few times. And I mean by through the HOA, not any other way. I've had violation letters a few times. And what typically happens is like a roof is a big one. If you don't power wash your roof, here in Florida, as you probably know, we get a lot of rain in the summertime and can get a little bit of mildewy after a course of a summer. And if it looks bad, like black, especially depending on the color of your tile, I have red. I used to have red, only more. I painted it black. Um, what happens is it looks moldy. And I'll call them and I'll say, listen, got your letter. I did not realize it was as bad as it is. Thank you for letting me know. I will take care of it in the next 2 weeks. And if I don't, it's an oversight and I will, let me know, but I will work on it. And that's all they want. Pretty much that keeps them at bay. So that's how you handle those violations. If you want advice on this stuff, reach out to Living in Palm Beach. Listen, reach out to me. I am not an attorney, but I have lots of being, on the board of directors of our community and president for much of that for 9 years. I know a thing or two. All right, landscaping, trees, dogs. We're gonna cover it here. Start with landscaping. Most communities have restrictions on what you can plant. Mostly there you can do anything, mostly, except here in Florida, a lot of times they do not allow fruit trees. I had a listing down in Boca Raton, Delray area that they had these exotic fruit trees and they were able to get away with it. But in general, they don't want you planting fruit trees because it attracts rodents, iguanas. You don't want to have an iguanas. Iguanas, once they start in your community, they multiply like rabbits. They do, they can be a problem. So just avoid that. Coconut trees are fine. I have like two big coconuts. They're like 35 feet tall now. They're fine, but but oranges and stuff like that, they sort of avoid that. But for the most part, they'll let you plant what you want. Speak to your HOA board. Go to your property manager. I might need to talk about property managers too, because that's an important element of HOAs. Pets. All right. Every community is different. I'm going to tell you what I see a lot of. 2 pets. Sometimes it's 4. I was just at an HOA, one up in Port St. Lucie, which is a little bit north of Palm Beach, that they allow 4. That's sometimes a restriction. The weight of the pet, it's usually a dog, is sometimes 50 pounds. So if you have like a Great Dane or a large dog for some reason, larger than that, that might be a problem. You want to look into that. You don't want to, move and find out you have to leave the dog back in New York, as an example. You want to watch that. A very common restriction is aggressive breeds. What is an aggressive breed? I don't know. It's up to their definition of what an aggressive breed will be. Usually, an aggressive breed is a purebred. And believe it or not, I know you dog lovers are going to hate this, and I am not for or against. I'm just telling you what it is. Pit bull. If you have a full-bred pit bull, they will likely consider that an aggressive breed. Rottweiler, Doberman Pinscher. There's a few of them on that. List. But some HOAs are more lenient than others. And this whole this is a support dog BS. And listen, I know you guys use that, but lots of times, let's face it, you're using it to get around the regulation. It's not going to work in lots of communities. You can try it. You can argue with your lawyer. Your lawyer will say that's absolutely not. But if assuming that is the case, it's going to cost you legal fees. And these HOAs, like I mentioned, they hire attorneys. So, but just know what it is. And if you can't live with it, find a community that'll work with you on it. All right, I'm going to go to what I talked about earlier, the turnover. So the way it works with a new builder, and we do again, we are a new home co-broker. I love talking about that. We know new construction communities down here better than anybody. Living in Palm Beach, we do more, some months 85% new construction. But we know the pros and cons of each community. So we understand this whole new construction environment. When a community is going, once they get to a certain point, a certain threshold in terms of homes sold and homes closed, they'll take that five board member committee and they'll open one slot to a resident. That resident will sort of be like the figurehead for the community. And they sometimes are fighting the builder because remember, originally as the builder's selling, there's an HOA, but it's really run by the builder because they have five builders on the board. I've got one up, and you guys might know I do a lot of business in Avenir. That's our biggest community in the last 2 years in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And we are by far the biggest, realtor or real estate company up there. There's one community that just did this that went from, and it happened to be with a closed buyer of mine, a good friend of mine as well. That he's the president and he's the one guy, and he's fighting the other four board members. But I give him credit because he's helping to establish the law of the land for that community for years to come, and he's very proud of his community. So I love that. But he's fighting to a certain extent the other four who might not want to spend money on roads, which is one of their elements. I know that community has up in Avenir, and he finally won that battle. And there's other stuff like that. So as it turns over and more people move into that community, it'll go from one to two to eventually five full board members that are residents. And then you guys can change stuff. As an example, if you buy into a community that has a guarded gate, who has a virtual, like it's common for builders to do virtual gates. Assuming they have the infrastructure for it, they can make it a manned gate. The residents will vote on that. And if you guys say we want to spend, obviously going to cost more money. You want to spend more money for a manned gate? I like that. My community's a manned gate. Go for it. Vote it in. There's a few communities nearby that have armed guards. Now, when you do an armed guard gate, it's going to cost you more money because now you have to have people that are licensed to carry and they know what they're doing with guns and whatnot. There aren't that many of them, but there are some. But that's an example of some of the things you can vote on. We had one recently where the landscaping was not included in the HOA, and they voted on it, and now they do. They raised the prices to include landscaping. Here is why another pro with HOAs. You get something. I'm an economist, so this makes complete sense. And if it doesn't to you, let me see if I can explain it. You get economies of scale when it comes to HOAs, when it comes to landscaping, when it comes to power washing, when it comes to painting clubhouse and painting homes and pretty much anything. When you're getting bids from contractors, and you're doing, let's say my community is 450. There are some, there's a community called Arden nearby, which we've talked about in many of our videos. We love that community. It's 2,300 homes. When you are a community of 2,300 homes, you get to spread the cost of everything out to 2,300 homes. That's why the cost of a lot of stuff is low there. I mean, the HOA there, it's like in the 300s, and the pool, wow. Look at the pool. The pool is just amazing. It's like a resort, the nicest pool in Palm Beach. And that's all included. They've got a working farm in there where you pick up your fruits and vegetables from the farm every month. It's part of your HOA. But the reason why it's so low is it's because they have economies of scale. The cost of all this stuff is spread over 2,300 homes in that community. So if they're looking at, let's say, I don't know, the cost to do painting or landscaping or any service, they'll get your bids from your contractors, and they're gonna price it better because now I'm gonna price this for 2,300 homes. The contractor's thinking, as opposed to just like Ray Fernandez and his family, which is family of 5 1 home. I'm not going to be as competitive with that. I don't need to be. That's what happens. So you do get economies of scale. Cable. So sometimes cable and internet, oftentimes actually, is included. Cable is sometimes being, in lots of these communities, being, phased out because of, Netflix and streaming and all that kind of stuff. But cable is still included with a lot. High-speed internet. So if you have 2,300 homes, your cable, you have a lot of leverage. Whether it's Infinity, Comcast, or Hotwire's another one that's a big one here. We know the vendors. If you want some help on this, even the HOA presidents, you want to talk about stuff and compare notes and stuff like that, reach out. I'll help you with that. We can talk about stuff. And I'd love to sell your house too. You know, you get a lot of benefit to having that many homes. Now, HOA communities with like 200 homes, it's not going to be nearly as you're not going to have nearly as much leverage. You'll have leverage, but not as much as if your neighborhood had thousands of homes. Let me touch on 55 plus communities. I probably should have done this earlier, but 55, I've used the term 55 plus communities are HOAs on steroids. And then someone repeated it back to me, and I'm like, I should have never used that term. I say that because I don't want to scare you. But let me tell you what HOAs are in 55 plus communities. It's all the same, except there are age restrictions. That's the big difference. You obviously, the 55 plus means you got to be 55 plus to move there. There's an 80-20 rule, which can get you around that rule. They're especially prevalent for people who are about to turn 55. If you're 53 and you're building a home that takes a year to build, they're gonna be fine with that in some cases. Other builders are not. Again, in Avenir, there's two communities up there. One is really lenient on this. The other one is strict. You could be 54 years, 11 months, and 28 days, and they'll say, nope, not going to do it. So you gotta watch that. But that's one of the big restrictions. Kids. That's what people get hung up on in 55 plus communities is, if you have kids living with you, they're going to be either have to be 18, 19, 20, 21. Every community is different. You're going to want to find out what that is if that pertains to you. And not just that. So if you're like on vacation for the summer and you have a kid that's 18 years old and that's the rule, they can live there while you're in Paris. I'm just making this stuff up. I'm actually going to Paris this summer. If for business, actually. If you're going to Paris and and your kids are home or home from college in the month of July, and you want to and they want to stay there for the month of July, have at it. They could do that. But you got to know what that rule is. So that's one of the reasons. So you want to look into what the visitation rights are. How about this one? You have grandkids there and you've got to be there to watch them. That's what some of them have. I've heard this before. Not a lot of the ones I do, but there are some that do that. So if you have a 17-year-old kid home from spring break and you've got to be there to watch them swim, come on. So anyways, these are some of the things. So I will help you get those docs. Let us help you. The cost for using us, I should have said this earlier, the cost for using us for these new construction community out of your pocket is zero. It's the builder that pays us, and they're happy to do so. You can ask them. So we will help guide you. And we're independent. So if this is not a community for you, I know a lot of other new constructions I can help you with. I also know resales. When you're looking at resale homes, the builder's not going to tell you about those. I will. I can help you. We can help you with those. So anyways, that's one of the reasons. So let us help you with those documentations. Let me round up some of these other key points you're going to want to know regarding HOAs. Did you know they are obligated to have a website and put the financials on there? If they're not doing that, hold them accountable to it. I mentioned audit. Get them audited. Make sure they're audited. Get to know the board members. You get to know them. Listen, I'm not saying they're bad people. Most of them, like I did it for the genuine of my heart. I also served down the street. I've served the kids ministry for the church. Didn't get paid for that either. And I helped kids, learn about baptism every year. I've been doing that for 15 years. So some people are like that are board members, not all out there to try and help their cousin's landscaping company. There, some people do it for gentlemen, but you want to make sure that they are. That's exactly it. And one of the best ways is through an independent audit. There's a ton of regulation in government, in Congress, and not in Congress, but in the state legislature, that are changing a lot of these things because there are some HOAs that take liberties and are power hungry. So our state government has been, looking at this, and they've been on them, and that's good. That's good for us. It's good for us as residents. That's great. By the way, where they're talking about possibly eliminating real estate taxes here in Florida, maybe you've heard that. Um, if they did that, watch out. Florida prices are going to be ridiculous. They're going to go through the roof. Now, my humble opinion is that's too good to be true. But I do think that there will be some compromise and there will be significant real estate tax law put into place. Reach out to us if you want to know more about that. But anyway, there's a lot of regulations going on right now as we speak with HOAs. Attorneys, having a good HOA, I speak with real estate attorneys all the time. Having a good resource in that regard helps. If you have questions, I could help you maybe navigate some of these things. But HOAs, you're either an HOA person or non-HOA person, maybe. But the truth is, there's some good and there's some bad. The only thing I want to know is, are they for you? North Florida, Central Florida, South Florida, paradise here in Florida.